Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, the Cebu governor stands by her decision to make the wearing of face masks optional when outdoors. The Interior Department is looking into issuing a show-cause order if Cebu insists on this policy, while the Justice Department says the president's executive order prevails over resolutions issued by local government. Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia and Interior spokesperson Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya join us live. The Interior Department is looking into issuing a show-cause order against Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia if she insists on making the use of face masks optional outdoors. DILG Undersecretary Epimaco Densing says a show-cause order will be the last step as officials in Central Visayas are now being asked to talk to Garcia.
And the executive order by Governor Gwen, but more importantly, we should most probably look into the details that it should be aligned with what is pronounced by the President.
Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara says an executive order issued by the President prevails over resolutions issued by local governments. But Cebu is already working to institutionalize its new face mask policy. The optional use of face masks outdoors will become a provincial ordinance by next week. Let's go straight to the source of the story. First off, we have Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia. Governor Garcia, it's good to have you back on the source. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's good to be back, Pinky. Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. So what is it? Does your executive order number 16 stand?
Okay. Let's put things in proper perspective. Let me answer Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara. There is no debate whatsoever that an executive order by the President, signed by the President, issued by the President himself, prevails over any other executive order issued by a much lower official like myself. However, I don't think Justice Secretary Guevara has been entirely forthright in giving his statement because he knows very well that the executive order that the President issued created the IATF EID. That was executive order then issued by President Noynoy Aquino. By virtue of that executive order 168, and that was issued way back in 2014. This was issued in anticipation of a probable epidemic or a pandemic, as what we have already seen, and therefore a task force would be created to address the emergency measures that needed to be taken. By virtue of that executive order, the IATF or the Interagency Task Force EID for Emerging Infectious Diseases was then created by now President Duterte. Subsequently, all other IATF resolutions are not executive orders. We are stretching the meaning of an executive order already at this point. And I would just hope that other lawyers would look into this. IATF resolutions are recommendatory in nature. That is why these are called resolutions, not executive orders, because it stretches the imagination by saying that cabinet secretaries which formulate the IATF are now acting as alter egos, I think, of the President. I think that's also already well settled in a Supreme Court ruling that they only serve as alter egos of the President when they are conducting their duties or responsibilities as the named secretary of that particular department itself. Like, for example, the DENR secretary orders the cease and desist order of issues a cease and desist order over a violating
company.
plant. So then he acts as an alter ego of the president. We have been listening to all of these statements and no one has questioned it. You know, and when they become part of that task force, then all subsequent resolutions that are issued by this task force, well, they themselves can look at it. These are not called executive orders. These are called IATF resolutions. And in these IATF resolutions, there is always the caveat that local government units are required or asked to issue the necessary resolutions or ordinances in order to support such recommendations or guidelines. So let's just be very, more honest and more forthright. Let's not get lost in trying to skim the true issue here. Okay, now I would like to answer also Undersecretary Densing and the CNN report. I read that report, Pinky, just a few minutes ago. And if I may respectfully say, that's exactly what you call foul baiting. The title, and you read it, of that story says, DILG ICE or may issue show cause order. But if you read the story itself, Secretary Densing says, this is a last resort. We will need to find ways by which the executive order of the governor may harmonize, or whatever the word was that he used, with existing IATF resolutions. Well, I'm glad Secretary Densing said that because he is a Cebuano after all. He comes from Katmon, Cebu. He even states in that particular news report that the wearing of face masks is not to be penalized. If someone does not wear a face mask, we give them face masks. That is the prevailing order here in the province of Cebu, which I issued a long time ago when, one LGU after another were scrambling all over themselves to impose fines on those that would not be wearing face masks and accosted by the PNP. I said that is so anti-poor because you will only be seeing those people walking on the streets who cannot afford expensive cars. You cannot run after those that are, after all, inside their air-conditioned cars, not wearing face masks. So you accost those that are walking, going to their place of work, or probably riding a bicycle and finding it so hard to breathe, take off their face mask, and you demand 300 to 500 pesos from these people, where 500 pesos would perhaps already mean 10 kilos of rice for their own family. And besides, there is no way of accounting for collecting these fines. Do we have a BIR receipt for that? Are we sure that all apprehensions are actually honestly turned over to the city treasurer or the municipal treasurer? It's just room for corruption. So what we have, and you are right, Usec Densing, the prevailing policy in the province of Cebu before I issued Executive Order 16 was that there should be no fines. You will not apprehend. If somebody is not wearing a face mask, we give them. The PNP should give them a face mask. I provided over 3 million masks to the PNP so that they would be following that pro-poor policy. So let's just put things in the proper perspective. Now,
Governor,
says,
may I follow up on what you said? So EO 168 on the creation on what could be a possible pandemic. Now, you had mentioned that a while ago, to which the IATF EID was created. And then it's very important that you said, because it's something I'd like to understand more. The IATF resolutions are recommendatory in essence. That's what you're saying. And to which the LGUs must issue either a resolution or an ordinance to complement, this is how I understand it, the resolutions that the IATF are recommending. Is that correct?
And I will quote the resolution issued by IATF. This is a resolution. What resolution is this? Anyway, this is the resolution that pertains to the different protocols for the different alert levels. And this resolution states LGUs are enjoined to enact the necessary ordinances to enforce protocols contained in these guidelines and to penalize in a fair and humane manner violations of these protocols. Law enforcement agencies are strongly enjoined to observe fair and humane treatment of violators. May I just show you? This is the IATF resolution itself. Therefore, the IATF recognizes that in fact, whatever guidelines or whatever resolutions they may issue, that is not a law created by Congress or passed by Congress and subsequently signed by the President. Neither is it an executive order. Here you go. This is guidelines on the nationwide implementation of alert level system for COVID-19 response, issued as recently June 4th, 2022. It is still a guideline. So I don't think Secretary Menardo Guevara has been quite forthright in trying to confuse an executive order of the President himself and guidelines issued by the IATF, which in fact enjoins local government units to issue the necessary ordinances so that they may impose penalties.
They may be implemented.
In order for their guidelines to be implemented, and therefore this is still recommendatory. In fact, if this were in fact the law, there's no penalty here. There is no penal clause in any of the guidelines. It's time that someone says it out loud. We have just kept too quiet and submissive to any statement by these personalities who have taken upon themselves the force of law. But now I wish to ask, are we a nation of laws or a nation of powerful men?
So
yes,
now
Pinky.
that you had explained that, I'm trying to understand that argument and that train of thought, wherein basically, I'm trying to simplify it. I'm not a lawyer because the IATF was created. They issue resolutions that are recommendatory, to which LGUs must issue resolutions or ordinances to support the recommendations of the IATF. I think that is your line of argument here. So now let's go to the issue, this Executive Order number 16, which you had signed, which is supposed to take effect immediately. This was signed June 8, 2022. So also to be clear about this, it basically tells us that the wearing of face masks in well-ventilated, where it is outdoors, is now optional. Okay. Now, the DILG is saying that this is not so. You must still follow the IATF resolution wherein it is not optional. You are saying it could be optional. They are saying it is not optional. The question now is two things. Are you still going to, does this EO that you signed still stand? And number two, have there been talks recently regarding this issue to be able to have some sort of resolution?
Well, first of all, I do wish that before statements emanate from anyone who wishes to threaten with apprehension or even confuse an executive order and a resolution issued by the IATF, I wish that they themselves would read the resolutions that they have issued. I am trying as best as I can in the most recent guidelines issued by the IATF, as I said, June 4th, 2022. And I have been reading and rereading this several times. Nowhere does it state that the wearing of face masks shall be mandatory 24 hours a day in any environment, whether it's open, well ventilated, or closed, air-conditioned places. There is, however, this guideline, the guidelines for alert level 2, for which they have classified the province of Cebu, which under section 5 states that the following establishments may be allowed to operate provided there is no objection from the LGU. And you have all of these venues for meetings, permitted venues for social events such as parties, weddings, receptions, visitor or tourist attractions, amusement parks, so on and so forth, cinemas, movie houses, so on and so forth. However, may I have that? There is only one particular, this is actually section 1. No, may I have that? That was pointed out. There is only one particular point here where the wearing of face masks is required by the service workers. The one pointed out. Guideline number. The wearing of face masks is required of those that are working in the establishments that are serving, the one that was given to us yesterday, that are serving the general public. But where is it? Where is it given? You know, we are confusing statements by Vergere, statements by the DOH that we should be wearing face masks at all times and take it off only when we are eating. So the virus does not attack when we're eating. Or else maybe if we are to bring the wearing of face masks to ridiculous levels, we might as well, you know, design a face mask with a slit for the mouth so that you can go on eating still wearing your face mask. Well, we see a lot of pictures even of these officials who have given such authoritative statements not wearing face masks when they are indoors. My executive order is even stricter because everyone is required to wear face masks in closed, air-conditioned areas. And is it an exception that if we take a picture, you can take off your face mask so the virus does not also attack when we take pictures? It has come to ridiculous levels.
But, okay, Governor Gwen, but does your EO stand? Because this obviously certainly could cause confusion among the people there. Can they? Will they? If they don't wear a face mask, can they be arrested? So let's stick to this. Does your EO stand? EO number 16.
I think any lawyer will tell you that apprehensions can only be done if there is the law to support it. What violation would any person be committing when Congress has not enacted a law mandating the use of face masks when you are in an open, well-ventilated environment? If you would arrest a person that is walking on the street, as what the order from the DILG is, and if you would arrest all of these people, especially now, where would you put them? You know, there is some kind of hypocrisy here. During the campaigns, you had hundreds of thousands that were gathered for the different rallies of our different presidential and vice presidential candidates. In fact, each camp, they were trying to outdo each other from 200 to 300 to 400 to 1 million. And certainly not everybody were wearing face masks then. Why were no arrests being done? Well, if they would have arrested all of those people, then they would be going against the very the very issue that they would wish to avoid. You would cram them into already crammed jails and therefore increase
Okay.
the rate of infection of this virus. As I said, arrest can only be done when there is the proper law, be it an ordinance or a presidential executive order or a law passed by Congress that specifically defines that violation. And for that, you have the attendant penalty. That is why, as I said, I repeat myself, the IATF has enjoined local government units to enact the proper ordinances with proper penal sanctions because they themselves cannot do that. And may I just remind, I have said this in the 2 previous programs that I appeared in yesterday. Section 105 of the Local Government Code, and that is the law. This was enacted by Congress way back in 1991, authored by the great Senate President, Aquilino Pimentel. At that time, my father also was a congressman, and he collaborated in the enactment of this law. Section 105, I shall read it again for everybody's attention, analysis, and acceptance, because we cannot change this unless this is voided by a proper court of law. This is direct national supervision and control by the Secretary of Health. The IATF is headed by the Secretary of Health. That is why you have such executive order that will form or create this IATF body. But it states that in cases of epidemics, well, we had a pandemic, pestilence, and other widespread public health dangers, the Secretary of Health, in this case, Secretary Duque, may, upon the direction of the President and in consultation with the local government unit concerned, upon the direction of the President, that is Executive Order 168.
Okay.
And temporarily assume direct supervision and control over health operations in any local government unit. Keyword, temporarily. For the duration of the emergency, but in no case, even if there were still that health emergency, but in no case exceeding a cumulative period of 6 months. It's been 2 years, Pinky. With the concurrence of the local government unit concerned, the period for such direct national control and supervision may be further extended. I am not making this up. This is the local government code.
Okay.
Erguere has been saying there should be national health protocols for the entire country. I think she has to read the local government code because local autonomy is enshrined in the Constitution. And that is why the local government code was one of the major codes enacted after the 1987 Constitution. I'd like to believe that the framers of the Constitution and Senator Aquilino Pimentel himself understood what local autonomy means and how important it is that local chief executives elected by the people, chosen by the people, will be given that mandate to decide what is best for their constituents. Pinky, I was elected with over 1,478,000 votes. 1,478,000 Cebuanos elected me in the May 9th election. This after I had formulated more liberal policies during the COVID-19 pandemic when I saw that lockdowns and other senseless restrictions were already causing more harm than good when our economy was getting devastated. I was criticized. I was given, so many names, but the silent majority apparently agreed with me because in the last elections, that 1.4 million votes was historic. No other governor achieved that. I ran against an opponent who was not a token candidate, a former Secretary of State, a multiple-term congressman, but I beat him with a margin of 1.1 million.
All right.
The 1.4 million and his votes, you know, I would rather answer to the 1.4 million Cebuanos that have given me a resounding vote of trust and confidence. If in the end, as what media would wish to project, I hope that is not what Usec then saying really wants to say, they would issue a show cause order to me. That's a small price to pay for living up and owning up to my responsibility in taking care of 1.4 million Cebuanos.
We will ask, I also have the ILG's Malaya next. We will be raising a lot of the points raised by Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia. In the meantime, ma'am, I wish we had more time, but I also have to give time to Undersecretary Malaya. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, Governor Gwen Garcia.
Thank you, Pinky. Hello to Undersecretary Malaya. And I hope, since we are supposed to be working together, the Department of the Interior and local government should be a department that looks after the welfare and recognizes the local autonomy of local governments. I hope that we can work together harmoniously here in a legal, fair, and just manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Daghan kayong
And
salamat.
thank you. Daghang salamat. We'll be back with Undersecretary Malaya. Okay, you're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our source today, the ILG Undersecretary, spokesperson Jonathan Malaya. Usec, okay, you heard the interview. There's so much to discuss. Please, your immediate reaction first.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Pinky, for having me in the show. Well, of course, we've always worked closely with local government units. No, let me say at the onset that yung sinabi po ni Governor Gwen Garcia that we should work in a fair manner. No, we have been working with her so many times, from the vaccination to all of the programs in the implementation of the protocols in Cebu, the province of Cebu, and we have been. It has been a harmonious relationship, no, and we will continue to do so as we move forward. Let me just address one concern that she raised, which is about the executive order she issued as opposed to the IATF resolutions.
Right.
If you look at the IATF resolutions per se, you will see there that these IATF resolutions were in fact adopted by the president through an executive order. So in the case of the guidelines of June 4, 2022, no, these were adopted by the president through Executive Order number 151. And EO number 151, if you will just Google this, no, this adopts the alert level system or the guidelines for the alert level system issued by the IATF. So although it's true that IATF resolutions are primarily recommendatory, when adopted by the president through an executive order, then it becomes the law of the land, because this has been adopted by the president. So let me just clarify that the IATF resolution on the alert level systems were adopted by the president through executive order number 151.
151. Opo. And because you're saying that it holds, I guess, as you mentioned, it becomes a law. Sa madaling salita, yun po sinasabi ninyo. Dahil it was adopted by President Duterte.
Yes, and if you will, remember, Pinky, every time there is a critical meeting of the IATF, it's presented to the president, and it's shown on TV sa Talk to the People. And si Secretary Ibarra is always the person that makes sure, importante ito, let's convert this to an executive order. So many of the critical decisions made by the IATF were adopted by the president and translated to an executive order. In the case of the
many
alert level,
sorry, Usec, do you mean many or all? all recommendations made by the IATF were adopted by the president, or all resolutions or recommendations by the IATF were adopted by the president?
No, I'm not entirely I'm not entirely sure, no, kasi
Okay.
but as far as what we're talking about is concerned, no, if we're talking about
Okay,
the
sige.
guideline on the alert level system, I am sure that it was adopted by the president, and even in the resolution mentioned by Governor Gwen Garcia, the resolution of June 4, 2022, it states in the whereas clause that the guidelines were adopted through Executive Order number 151, and Executive Order number 151 contains the requirement of wearing the mandatory use of face masks, except when eating or drinking, or team individual sports, or practicing outdoor exercise activities.
Exercise, yeah. Does it have any statements there or penalties on people who will not be using face masks in that resolution 151 adopted by President? Were there any penalties there, sir? Or were there any words on arrests will be made to those who will violate?
Okay. Governor Gwen is correct that the IATF resolution does not state any penal clause. So the executive order issued by the president, 151, this is implemented through two ways. Okay. Number one, through our local government units. Okay. So local government units, we encourage them to issue their respective policies adopting the executive order of the president. And through ordinances, they state there the penalties. So magkakaiba po yung penalties na yan. You will find the penalty in Manila different from the one
For
in
LGU.
Caloocan. And
Opo.
yes, and we have monitored this, and all LGUs, for example, in Metro Manila, have their respective ordinances penalizing the improper use or the not wearing of face masks. So that's the first way to implement.
Okay, let me cut you there, so I understand this better also. So you used the word kasi encouraged. The LGUs are, encouraged to adopt these resolutions that were adopted by the president. What happens if the LGU doesn't put any penal clause or any penalties on people who will not be wearing face masks? For example, as mentioned by Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia sa kanila, kapag mahuli na walang face mask, hindi huhulihin kundi bibigyan ng face mask. Does that stand? Because the word is encouraged. The LGUs are encouraged to adopt the resolutions made by the IATF, adopted by the president.
Yes. So let me just continue, Pinky, kasi that's the first manner upon which we implement IATF resolutions, through ordinances passed by the LGU. So if the LGU does not impose a penal, a imprisonment, for example, or if they do not impose a fine, but instead community service, then that's valid. So when arrests are made in a certain locality, let's say in Manila, and their ordinance simply states fine on the first instance, first offense, so that's valid. Okay, so there's leeway on the part of the LGUs on how to implement the policy. The second way to implement the EO of the president, or the IATF resolution, is through the Philippine National Police. Okay, so the PNP then implements the ordinance utilizing the clauses found therein. So kung ano yung nakalagay sa ordinansa, yun ang i-implement ng PNP. However, the PNP also has other laws that it also implements. So since the Philippine National Police is another national government agency under the direct control and supervision of the President through the Secretary of Interior and Local Government, then Secretary Anyo can implement the President's directive to the PNP. So question, if the ordinance does not state an arrest, can the PNP still arrest? Yes.
Okay.
Because if a person in authority makes a calls on a person to follow and he does not follow, then it becomes a violation of the revised penal code, which is disobedience to a person of authority. So
Okay.
it now
Usec,
becomes a violation of the revised penal code. It becomes a violation of a national law rather than a local law. So it depends
okay.
on the basis upon which the arrest is made.
Okay. Usec, we just have to say goodbye on television. We've run over time, but we will continue our conversation on Facebook. This needs much more understanding. For the meantime, I want to thank Undersecretary Malaya. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines. We'll be back on Facebook. Okay, you're watching The Source on CNN Philippines' Facebook account. So I still have Undersecretary Malaya. Usec, so I get it, no? There are two ways to which I cut you in the first one, ano? Yung ordinance. Kailangan may ordinance. I will try to simplify it kasi medyo technical din po siya para sa akin. The other one is through the PNP. Ito po yung number 2 option na i-adapt po nila o i-implement nila yung ordinansa. In the absence of an ordinance, they are able to effect arrests. Again, could you simplify that last portion? Kung in the absence of an ordinance from the local government unit, the PNP can?
Yes, because the president is the commander-in-chief of the Philippine National Police. And therefore, the president can make that policy decision. Sabi ng presidente, mandatory, everyone should wear face mask. The PNP can then implement that utilizing the presidential directive. Okay? So, pag hindi sumunod yung tao, pwede siyang arestuhin. And pag hindi sumunod, it becomes a violation of the revised penal code. Yung tinatawag nating disobedience to a person in authority. Okay, so there are two ways to have this. There are two penalties that can be implemented: either a violation of the ordinance, whatever penal clause is there, or a violation of the revised penal code, whatever penal clause is there. Pero Pinky, kung makikita mo naman, we've always been very lenient about implementing this, no? Makikita mo naman, gaya ng sinabi ni Governor Gwen Garcia, our approach has always been magmimigay nga kami ng face mask. That's right, no? So LGUs provide face mask, the Department of Health provides face mask to the police. Namimigay po tayo, no? Lagi namang last resort yung arrest. Yung talaga matigas ang ulo at nakikipag-away na sa police, no? It has never been our policy na aresto ka agad. As you can see.
Pero papaano yung sitwasyon ngayon sa Cebu province? Because there's an EO, di ba, by the governor. Secretary Anyo is saying those who do this, who follow this, who will not wear masks outside, will be arrested. Tama ho ba? Let's be clear, sinabi po ni Sec. Go ahead, sir.
No, let me clear yung sinabi ni Sec Anyo. Ang sinabi ni Sec Anyo, the Philippine National Police will continue to apprehend, okay? Ibig sabihin sitahin or make arrests if necessary. Yun naman ang wording nung statement ni Secretary Anyo. And we crafted it very carefully because we wanted to make sure na we are not in the arresting mode. From the very beginning, Pinky, of the pandemic since 2020, alam naman ng tao yan. We only make arrests as a last resort. It has never been our policy.
Para maintindihan ng tao kasi may apprehend, okay, or make arrests if necessary. Ano ho ibig sabihin ng apprehend? Anong gagawin sa tao pag inapprehend?
Pagsasabihan.
Sisitahin.
They will sisitahin. Sisitahin yung tao. Kasi tama naman si Governor Gwen kanina, no? Wala naman tayong paglalagyan ng daang-daang tao sa mga kulungan natin. So sisitahin. Yun ang importante kasi kasi pag hindi mo sinita, hindi na talaga yan. Wala na. Even yung indoor policy natin sa face mask, we can forget about that.
Okay.
Pag wala nang naninita, and this is what we would like to emphasize, that the pandemic is still there. Meron nga tayong uptick, 208 new cases na tayo a daily. So the uptick says that, we have to be vigilant. We have to remember that the pandemic is not yet over. And let's continue at least, to have this small sacrifice for our country. Mag-face mask muna tayo until everything is clear.
Okay, DILG Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya. Sir, thank you so much also for your time and extending. Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat po at mabuhay kayo. Thank you, Pinky.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us here on The Source.